Let us give thanks for the world around us, thanks for all the creatures, stones, and plants. Let us learn their lessons and seek their truths, so that their path might be ours. And we might live in harmony, a better life. May the earth continue to live, may the heavens above continue to live. May the rains continue to dampen the land, may the wet forests continue to grow. Then the flowers shall bloom, and we, the people, shall live again. So this talk is loosely organized around the Gaia hypothesis, which states that living matter collectively defines and regulates the material conditions necessary for the continuance of life. The planet, or rather the biosphere, is thus likened to a vast self-regulating organism. Fundamentally, it states that organisms co-evolve with their environment. All life forms are therefore considered part of a single planetary being called Gaia. Whether Gaia is a sentient being or simply a device for explaining the very complex functioning of nature remains to be seen in the future. From Swami Vivekananda, we find that searching through the mind, we at last come to that oneness, that universal one, the internal soul of everything, the essence and reality of everything, the ever free, the ever blissful, the ever existing. Through material science, we come to the same oneness. Science today is telling us that all things are but manifestations of one energy, which is the sum total of everything which exists. Earth's average orbital speed is about 67,000 miles per hour. Our sun is moving at about 45,000 miles per hour around the outer edge of the galaxy. But our galaxy, the Milky Way, is caught in the tug of a great attractor, incredibly dense and unimaginably large, 150 million light years away in the direction of the Hydra Centaurus supercluster. So we are hurtling toward this mysterious mass at a speed of 370 miles per second. Why aren't we dizzy? This is what I ask myself. We're going in all these circles simultaneously. Interestingly, the Earth is just the right distance from the sun, called the Goldilocks zone. The bulk of the water neither boils away nor freezes permanently in this zone. Also, the 21-degree angle of inclination that the planet has away from the plane of the sun is responsible for the 4 seasons and the evolution of plants and animals to those annual changes. Without this pressure, life would be much more static and probably much less diverse. Count up these and other coincidences, that is, our distance from the sun, etc. There's a whole lot of them. Can they be random? Here is Gaia. She has a heartbeat. It's an electromagnetic wave of 7.83 hertz, a number that aligns with the peaceful brainwave activity of humans. NASA scientists have detected these waves up to 500 miles away from the Earth. You might say that this aligns with Sri Ramakrishna's idea of the mother. Quote, "Sometimes I find that the universe is saturated with the consciousness of God as the earth is soaked with water in the rainy season," unquote. But Earth is actually much more of a twin planet. The giant impact hypothesis, sometimes called the Big Splash, suggests that the moon formed out of the debris left over from a collision between Earth and an astronomical body about the size of Mars, approximately 4.5 billion years ago. This is probably why this planet has this 21-degree tilt. Analysis of lunar rocks suggests that the impact may have been a direct hit, causing a thorough mixing of both parent bodies. One piece of evidence is that the stable isotope ratios of lunar and terrestrial rocks are identical, implying a common origin. Therefore, this great impact hypothesis is currently the favored scientific hypothesis for the formation of the moon. Okay, so that's our twin. So let's look at a cutout view of the Earth. The Earth has an iron core, which generates a magnetic field around the planet. This shields it from the sun's harmful violet rays. The crust, as you can see, is a very thin layer indeed. And it moves continually in great sheets called tectonic plates. In this way, over the lifetime of the planet, that is about 5 billion years, the continents have been drawn back beneath the surface through a process called subduction and reformed several times. At the surface, however, there's actually a thin layer of water that covers about 70% of it. Most of the languages of the world have various names for this planet. Prithvi, Terra, Erd, but they all basically mean the same thing, dirt. But Earth did not always have dirt. The time needed to form a soil depends on the latitude. In environments characterized by a mild climate, it takes 200 to 400 years to form 1 centimeter of soil. In wet tropical areas, soil formation is faster, about 200 years. In order to accumulate enough substance to make a soil fertile, it takes 3,000 years. The profile of soil includes inorganic matter at about 40 to 45% by volume, organic matter about 5% by volume, water about 25%, and air another 25%. A fertile soil will contain all the major nutrients for basic plant nutrition. That is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and other trace elements. And it will have a pH that is an acid-base ratio between 6 and 7. So 20% of the land mass that has dirt is inhabited by humans. But what do we do to soil? We blow it away, we wash it away, we monoculture it and deplete it, we pollute it with pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, we build shopping malls and tract housing on it. Enough of that for right now. We'll talk dirty a little bit later. Now, Gaia has major ecosystems through which it operates. Life operates on this planet, and we're going to look at each in turn. We've got mountains, deserts, grasslands, forests, and wetlands. We're going to take it in, not necessarily in that order, but first, before doing that, we have to recognize that we have now reached the point where more than 50% of people now live in cities. One aspect of growth in cities is cement. Producing concrete accounts for, actually cement itself, accounts for about 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions. Firing the kilns required for this process is very energy intensive, and the process itself also releases carbon dioxide. The primary ingredient in concrete is calcium oxide, which is taken from limestone and leaves carbon dioxide as a byproduct. Then the resulting concrete streets and buildings, together with asphalt roads, radiate accumulated heat throughout the night, and the lack of trees contribute to the making of scorching cities. For example, the urban heat island effect makes LA almost 6 degrees hotter than the surrounding desert. About 55 to 66 million years ago, grasses first appeared on this planet. Most of our Great Plains in the US, probably Canada as well, are altered or disturbed lands that used to be native tallgrass prairie. But plowing destroyed the original prairie plants, and people planted fescue and other grasses for cattle. Most of the grasses that now dominate the pastures and old fields are cool season grasses. That is, they turn green and grow quickly in the springtime, and then dry and go dormant in the hot, droughty summers. And then they renew their growth again in the fall's return to cooler weather. But unfortunately, for many species of grassland wildlife, these fields cannot offer the rich, varied food sources, nesting sites, and shelter that they would get from native grasslands. But the original warm season grasses can photosynthesize most efficiently during the hottest, driest months, so they are green, lush, and growing vigorously in midsummer. Historically, the tallgrass prairie occupied about 150 million acres. However, this grassland is a globally endangered resource, and the estimates of the remaining tallgrass prairie range from 1 to 18% of its former distribution. I would say probably closer to the 1% than the 18. Also, due to plowing and other agricultural practices, half of the topsoil of the planet has been lost in the last 150 years. In addition to erosion, soil quality is affected by other aspects of agriculture. These include compaction, loss of soil structure, nutrient degradation, and soil salinity. The effects of soil erosion go way beyond the loss of fertile land. Now, this is a very interesting creature called the Saiga antelope. It originally inhabited the Eurasian steppe. In 1958, their range covered about 2.5 million square kilometers. Currently, it's only found in one location in Russia and 3 areas in Kazakhstan. The populations have shrunk enormously, as much as 95% in 15 years. The Saiga is classified as critically endangered. More importantly, the grasslands that they inhabit have now turned more desolate because the grasses depended upon the herds, trampling them, leaving manure, and keeping them cropped. Most grasslands worldwide are now used for domestic cattle production. But livestock uses 83% of farmland to produce just 18% of calories. So it turns out that avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to reduce your environmental impact on the planet. Realizing this, farmers in the European Union have reduced greenhouse gas emissions from fertilizer by 17%, while having the yields actually rise. And China is phasing out support for fertilizers. In Costa Rica, a remarkable return of forests followed the elimination of cattle subsidies and payments for improving nature. Now, regenerative agriculture, well, first let's do some dirty talk. Okay, it turns out that humus may be the most important thing in soil. The term humus is sometimes used to describe well-aged compost, but compost is not humus. Dead plant and animal material consists of organic matter. When organic matter starts to decompose, these molecules are broken down into smaller and smaller molecules by the microorganisms in the soil. Most of the usable chemicals in the organic matter are extracted by the microorganisms and are eventually made available to plants. When all of the good stuff in the organic matter is used up, and some molecules remain that can't be used by microorganisms or plants, this remaining material is called humus. Humus is so stable that it can persist in the soil for hundreds of years. Humus consists of very large, complex, carbon-based molecules. That's why they say, the people in regenerative agriculture, that we need to get the carbon back into the soil. Regenerative agriculture is a system of farming practices and principles that increases biodiversity, enriches soils, improves watersheds, and enhances ecosystem services. Regenerative agriculture aims to capture carbon in soil and above-ground biomass, reversing the current global trends of atmospheric accumulation. In other words, take it out of the air, put it in the ground, where it belongs. Okay, wetlands. I'm sorry that we don't have better resolution on a lot of these pictures. Wetlands prevent flooding by holding water much like a sponge. By doing so, wetlands keep our river levels normal and filter and purify the surface water. Wetlands accept water during storms and whenever water levels are high. When water levels are low, they slowly release the water. Now, this guy was so cute, I could not resist him. This is an axolotl, a freshwater salamander from Mexico. But I want to talk a little bit about ocean invertebrates, another water creature, or I should say huge phyla of water creatures. Right now there's a huge unbalance in these life forms now in the oceans. There's a huge overabundance of squid. There's overgrowth of algae due to chemical runoff into the ocean. We have recurring red tides in various places in the earth, around the earth. And then these seep into the coastal marshes and threaten aquatic species. Here are 10 top benefits of wetlands. First of all, a wildlife nursery. That's where a lot of animals come to lay their eggs or grow their, even including songbirds and shellfish, not just in the ones in the water, but the whole environment around. Flood control, of course. A pollution filter. If trees are the lungs of the planet, then wetlands are its kidneys. That's what we have to remember. Wetlands are the kidneys of, and if your kidneys fail, they're a storm buffer, they're a wind buffer, they provide fertile land for farming rice and many fish species, reeds and papyrus. They provide recreation and tourism, a carbon sink because they capture carbon. Many jobs in the U.S. alone. We employ more than 69 million people in related industries. That would be tourism, et cetera, in areas that have wetlands. And they mitigate sea level rise. By 2100, New York City could witness sea level rise of up to 6 feet. New York has now begun a 68-acre wetland mitigation bank on Staten Island. Why, what they're going to do about Manhattan, I have no idea. There's some wetland type forest areas. 24% of Earth's landmass is mountainous. Most of Eurasia, the most of it is in Eurasia, at 33%. And this is followed by North America, 24%, South America, 19%, and finally Africa at 14%. Here is a mountain creature. The snow leopard's powerful build allows it to scale great steep slopes with ease. Its hind legs give her the ability to leap 6 times the length of her body. A long tail provides balance and agility and also wraps around as protection from the cold. Climate change poses perhaps the greatest long-term threat to snow leopards. Impacts from climate change could result in a loss of up to 30% of the snow leopard habitat in the Himalayas alone. In general, one result of the loss of an apex predator is what's known as trophic cascade. The unraveling of an ecosystem's fabric as prey populations boom, then crash, and the various levels of the food web no longer keep each other in check. This is also called functional extinction. That is, animals and plants are still present, but not in sufficiently prevalent to affect how an ecosystem works. All its former interactions with its environment, that is, things like seed dispersal, predation, pollination, and all the other ecological functions that an animal once had, this all ceases. The more interactions are lost, the more disordered the system becomes. Now, in Europe, the same thing is happening in the Alps. As the water towers of our world, mountains store and deliver water to the rivers on which all our lives depend. Despite their formidable and awe-inspiring physicality, these are some of the most fragile habitats on the planet. Harsh climates, thin soils, and steep gradient make it very hard for plants and animals to live here. Consider what's happening with the Chinese damming up the Himalayas, the rivers in the Himalayas. Now, another section of Gaia's expression on Earth, deserts. The term desert actually refers to a variety of different land types. Deserts are primarily defined by their dryness, that is, any land area that has an annual deficit of water, that is, an area where moisture evaporates more than is taken in. Deserts of all types constitute an approximate 33% of the Earth's total land mass. That's because of Antarctica. Antarctica is the biggest desert that there is, and so when you add that in, it makes it look like we've got a lot of desert. In Australia, there are 10 deserts. It makes up a fifth of that continent. It's the driest inhabited continent. 70% of its mainland receives less than 2 inches of rain annually. But as compensation, Australia has the richest diversity of lizard fauna. They have over 210 species of reptiles living throughout arid Australia. So we have something to be happy about. Okay, so going on to forests. Definition: a forest is a completely closed tree canopy, dense understory, and relatively few shade-tolerant herbaceous plants on the ground. Forests cover 31% of the world's land surface. This is down from a pre-industrial amount of 22.8 billion square miles. It's now down to 15.4. But more than 80% of the Earth's natural forests have already been destroyed. That's too bad, because trees cool and moisten our air and fill it with oxygen. They calm the winds and shade the land from sunlight. They shelter countless species, anchor the soil, and slow the movement of water. They provide food, fuel, medicines, and building materials for human activity. But apart from us, the fungal networks, the below-ground networks that keep the whole forest healthy and alive, is there. These plants interact and communicate with one another. They have serotonin. They also have glutamate, which is one of our own neurotransmitters. There's a ton of it in plants. Old trees can tell which seedlings are of their own seed. There are very sophisticated actions going on between fungi associated with those particular trees. We know these old trees are changing their behavior in ways that give advantage to their own kin. Then the kin responds in a sophisticated way by growing better or having better chemistry. A parent tree will even kill off its own offspring if they're not in a good place to grow. So the idea of a mother tree has long been there. Native Americans called them tree people. Now here are a couple of species that live in forests and are on the verge of extinction. The sloth and the, I believe this is a lowland gorilla. In addition to extinction and extirpation is a localized extinction, scientists now speak of defaunation, the loss of abundance, the loss of a planet's absolute animalness. Since 1970, Earth's various populations of wild land animals have lost 60% of their members. What we have instead is ourselves. If you look at the world's mammals by weight, 96% of that biomass is humans and livestock. Just 4% is wild animals. We've begun to talk about living in the Anthropocene, a world shaped by humans. But E.O. Wilson, the naturalist and prophet of environmental degradation, has suggested another name, the Ermiocene, the age of loneliness. This is an American chestnut. At one time, the total number of chestnut trees in eastern North America was estimated at over 3 billion, or 25% of the trees in the Appalachian Mountains alone, just in that part. They were actually, there's evidence that they were actually planted by the Native Americans. The airborne bark fungus spread 50 miles a year and in a few decades killed up to 3 billion American chestnut trees. Salvage logging may have unwittingly destroyed trees which had high levels of resistance to this disease and thus aggravated the calamity. The disease reached southern Ohio in the 1920s, and by the 1950s, the American chestnut population was considered effectively extinct. But the American chestnut is not actually extinct. This is one of these extirpation things. In fact, about 2,500 chestnut trees are growing on 60 acres in Wisconsin. And there are millions of sprouts, they say, that can be found throughout its native range. So there may be hope of a return. Rituals were developed to honor and protect Mother Earth all over the planet, all the different cultures. Certain plants and trees were sacred and groves of trees were preserved. In India, the Bhumi Puja, the priest would ask permission from Bhumi to build in a certain place at an auspicious time. The Native Americans also do this. Before they build for their dance grounds for the thirsty dance. Now this is a little bit of a departure. There's a fantastic, this sounds a little bit like Swami Vivekananda, but it's actually 13th century Zen master Dogen. Whoever told people that mind means thought, opinions, ideas, and concepts. Mind means trees, fence posts, tiles, and grasses. His mountains and streams are the processes of the earth, all of existence, process, essence, action, absence. They roll being and non-being together. They are what we are what they are. For those who would see directly into essential nature, the idea of the sacred is a delusion and an obstruction. It diverts us from seeing what is before our eyes, plain thusness. Roots, stems, and branches are all equally scratchy. No hierarchy, no equality, no occult and esoteric, no gifted kids and slow achievers, no wild and tame, no bound or free, no natural and artificial. Each totally its own frail self. Even though connected all which ways, even because connected all which ways. That is a look into Soto Zen. And by the way, the koan for Dogen meant or means absolute reality or universal dharma. This is the American elm. Again, just like the chestnut, it was everywhere. But Dutch elm disease spread through interlocking root systems, which were created because humans loved them so much that they planted them too close to one another. It has been estimated that only approximately 1 in 100,000 American elm trees is Dutch elm resistant or disease tolerant. Most known survivors simply having escaped exposure to the disease. So the American elm does continue to survive, notably in Florida, Alberta, and British Columbia. Now you got to see this. Here's another sort of forest dweller, although he's not in the forest in this. Watch. He's in some reserve, and somebody gave him food he should not eat, and he knows it, and he's telling them. No. Is it, I mean, this is a silverback gorilla, a male, God knows how much, probably weighs like a ton or something. And look at how gentle, how sweet. And he's telling people, no, you can't do that. It just blows me away. Anyway. Forests are considered one of the world's largest banks for all of the carbon emitted into the atmosphere. They account for 50% of plant productivity, and as much as 45% of the carbon stored on land is tied up in forests. Because they grow year-round, tropical forests are believed to be the most productive on Earth. They store vast amount of carbon in the wood and the roots of the trees. But tropical deforestation and forest degradation also account for between 10 and 20% of all man-made emissions of carbon dioxide. So even though you've got the forest there creating all of this, wonderful oxygen, etc., you've also got people destroying them and then creating more carbon dioxide right next to it. Now, I ran into some very interesting quotes from some of the Hindu scriptures. Whoop, wrong one. Where am I? From the Rig Veda. Do not cut trees because they remove pollution. Now, can you imagine they knew about pollution back then? Although you'd have to look at the translation. I'm not really sure what word was used. Do not disturb the sky and do not pollute the atmosphere. That's from the Yajurveda. Don't destroy forests with tigers and don't make forests devoid of tigers. Forests can't be saved without tigers, and tigers can't live without forests, because forests protect tigers and tigers protect forests. That's from the Virat Parva. So this is not new information. I mean, we're actually reclaiming nowadays what has been known to humanity who have lived in natural environments. Being in a city just kind of wipes you out in terms of connection. Here's a story from the Hindu epic Mahabharata. 5 noble princes were banished from their kingdom and had to dwell in the forest for many years. One of the princes, Bhima, to release his anger at this injustice, began chopping away at nearby trees. Blinded by his rage, Bhima was unable to see the impact of his actions until Krishna gently placed an arm on Bhima's shoulder to stop him. Brother Bhima, what are you doing? Krishna asked kindly. Bhima explained his anger, not only at the prince's predicament, but also at his inability to rectify it. But why are you taking your anger out on these helpless trees? Krishna asked. Are they the cause of your angst? Did these trees take your kingdom from you? Or was it the birds whose homes you just destroyed? They can't even defend themselves against you. Bhima, ashamed, looked down and dropped the axe. Krishna put his arm around Bhima, led him back to the tent and said, remember, we must only take from nature what is a necessity. If human beings today forget this principle and begin to abuse their power over nature, future generations of humanity will pay the price. So as long as we're talking about Indian connections, let's talk about Earth in the oldest classification system, or philosophical system, called the Sankhya. This Sankhya delineates that nature evolved. In this system, the last evolute of nature, coming after space, wind, fire, and water, is Earth, and it has nearly infinite modifications. Earth, or Prithvi Tattva, is also known as Bhumi, meaning to be or to exist. It has the qualities of solidity, weight, cohesion, and discreteness. Smell is its corresponding sense in Sankhya, and the activity associated with it is elimination. Pictured here is the yantra for Prithvi. Yantras are made to aid in contemplation, to gain deeper understanding and final oneness with the object of contemplation. From Swami Vivekananda, this is a fact that variation exists, and so it must be, if life is to be. God is perceived in nature, but it is also a fact that nature is perceived in God. The whole universe is a play of unity in variety and of variety in unity. The whole universe is a play of differentiation and oneness. The whole universe is a play of the finite in the infinite. We cannot take one without granting the other. Now, we use many earthy type items in puja. Not pictured here are things like rice, ghee, yogurt, food items, sweets. We offer back to the deity what she has already given us. Earth is characterized by extensiveness, specialization, and evolution. That's how all these things came to be. But let's look at past evolution. The Earth has seen 5 major extinction episodes. The first 2 each wiped out 80 to 85% of the species. The last 2 each wiped out 70 to 75% of species. The one in the middle, the Permian, wiped out 96% of species and took 80 million years to recover. Trilobites, as pictured here, first appeared about 540 million years ago, near the start of the period of greatest animal diversity. They disappeared in that third extinction. This third extinction, called the Permian, is now thought to have been the result of gamma ray bombardment that destroyed the protective ozone layer sufficiently to destroy all life except at the greatest ocean depths. But trilobites were among the most successful creatures ever to live. There were hundreds of types of them. They went extinct about 252 million years ago, but they reigned for 300 million years, twice the span of dinosaurs. By contrast, humans have survived 0.5% as long. Plants moved on to land about 450 million years ago. Animals, about 400 million. Today, species around the world are disappearing at almost 1,000 times the natural rate, which means we're losing about 150 to 200 species every day. Close to 15% of all animal species and 11% of all bird species are currently listed as threatened with extinction. There's been, as you know, ceaseless evolution of life forms on this planet. Gaian self-regulation may be very effective, but there is no evidence that it prefers one life form over another. Countless species have emerged and then disappeared from the Earth over the last 3.7 billion years. We have no reason to think that Homo sapiens are any different in that respect. Here's one that you probably may not know about. Giant sloth. They grew to about almost 10 feet tall, and they weighed to 2,200 pounds. They were herbivores, feeding on yuccas, agaves, and grasses. This is in South America. They could stand on hind legs, use the tail to balance, and reach for upper growth vegetation. Although officially extinct for 10,000 years, there apparently were some in South America in 1421 when the Chinese expeditionary fleet reached the west coast of South America and took some back with them to China. By the way, if you've ever wondered why Columbus decided to test the flat Earth idea, it was because he had copies of the maps the Chinese had made on their circumnavigation of the Earth 70 years prior. This is a type of penguin called the great auk, which was a flightless seabird extinct since 1844. They were found in the North Atlantic on the rocky coastal islands. But it was a tiny bird, for a penguin, 30 inches long, wings 6 inches long, because they just use them for swimming, not for flying. Extinction is a gut-wrenching tragedy. There is no coming back from it. Now we have the insect apocalypse upon us. This is most noticeable with bees that pollinate our crops commercially, but also others that simply do it, that is, pollinate according to their own nature. Focusing on the survival of a few symbolic species ignores the value of a natural world that thrives on richness, complexity, and interaction. Tigers still exist, yes, but that doesn't change the fact that 93% of the land where they used to live is now tigerless. Large animals, especially top predators, connect ecosystems to one another and move energy and resources among them simply by walking around and eating and defecating and dying. I don't think Mother appreciates that her vehicle, the tiger, has been brought to this pass. We are not the center of form and function for the world in which we live. Rather, Earth will maintain some sort of balance as humans continue to modify it, and this balance, while being satisfactory for most aspects of Gaia, may not be that satisfactory for us. If humans are mindful of the present functioning of Gaia and try to keep our modifications to a minimum, it stands to reason that Gaia will continue to help make Earth livable for us. More simply put, we need Gaia. She does not necessarily need us. From Lord Buddha, let no one deceive another nor despise anyone anywhere. As a mother protects her child with boundless loving kindness, cherish the world, love without limit. Evolution is the hallmark of Earth. It will continue to evolve new forms. From Swami Vivekananda, as fire coming into this world is manifesting itself in various forms, even so, that one soul of the universe is manifesting himself in all these various forms. As air coming into this universe manifests itself in various forms, even so the one soul of all souls, of all beings, is manifesting himself in all forms. This being so, we need not despair of the situation. I'm going to show you. There's this remarkable book that has come out detailing all the ways that humanity currently has at its disposal to reverse the effects of the wanton destruction of the last 200 years. The book is called Drawdown, and the only thing required to implement the suggestions in this book is the political and economic will to change the status quo. It's good reading, but a little bit boring. So I want to close with a prayer from the Navajo Way blessing ceremony. Blessing in Navajo is a concept of poise, balance, harmony, where feelings, thoughts, and actions are congruent. It reminds me a lot of Lakshmi, the characteristics that Lakshmi has. In beauty I walk, with beauty before me I walk, with beauty behind me I walk, with beauty above me I walk, with beauty around me I walk. The universe walks with me in beauty. Today I will walk out. Today everything negative will leave me. I will be as I was before. I will have a cool breeze over my body. I will have a light body. I will be happy forever. Nothing will hinder me. In beauty all day long may I walk. My words will be beautiful. Through the returning seasons may I walk. On the trail marked with pollen may I walk. With beauty all around me may I walk. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, lively may I walk. In old age, wandering on a trail of beauty, living again may I walk. It is finished in beauty.
I'm going to play a number from the Vivekananda oratory, and I'm going to read the words so that you can get them clearly. The Lord is the omnipresent one with
make an announcement?
For some of us, may I say all of us, it's been a magnificent service. And I think that we would love to proclaim to the world that Vedanta is totally 100% in on this point of view. Vivekananda, you remember our luminary, said that science and truth are all the religion there is. I want to thank our sister. Magnificent journey for our evolution, our spiritual evolution lies ahead of us. And I'm tempted to say our evolution, if any, but I believe we'll be sustained somehow, maybe like the American chestnut and the American elm, to rise in glory with the Vedanta insights that we all hold. Now, this is something you can do about it. Because the pardon of the world's religions are Swamiji's shining footsteps, right? And for example, they have like 800 workshops sometimes. And the vast, probably more than any other single subject in Toronto, were a concourse among deeply anguished-driven people from all over the world about this very point and subject. So, on December 8th, my friends, there will be a gathering of gratitude by your committee, the only one in the world, Southern California Committee for the Pardon of the World's Religions, up near the Mormon Temple at St. Paul the Apostles. I'd love you to look at these. The important point is that we're gathering all of the interfaith groups we can find and think of, many of whom have interrelated and worked with us and vice versa. And I can think of no greater testimony than Vedanta showing up to this potluck on December 8th. The Church Universal, of which St. Francis, that's a good slip. I call him Francis II. Pope Francis is the head, has come up with a marvelous concept of environmentally sound. They love it. Laudato Si, how to live on the earth, how to continue to live on the earth. And they have a wonderful phrase there in that Church Universal, that a sacrament is an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. So I happen to think that by showing up to this as our outward and visible sign, please make an effort, if you can, to come on December 8th for us all. Thank you, sister.
Next week, Swami talks about love of God, and classes, etc., continue as normal. I don't see anything. Karma Yoga, yeah, next week, Saturday, we have a Karma Yoga Day. And if you're interested in that and are not on our special mailing list for it, see Swami Mahayogananda, and he'll send you the announcements. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Avir Ma Edi. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light and from death to immortality. May the self-manifesting Atman manifest to us. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.